Welcome to Flatline to Beatline. I am your host, Nightshade. Let's do this.
Burn it down!
My guest is no stranger to the pagan and witch communities. He is an author, tarot reader, witch, and much more. Who do I speak of? Mat Auryn. Let's break through the noise. I would like to showcase a very special business. It's called Deep Within the Hollow, and it's owned and operated by Ravenwood. Her products and services are truly authentic and top quality. I have known Raven for many years, and it is her shop, Deep Within the Hollow, that is the only pagan witch business that I endorse. Why? Because I believe in her products and her services, and I believe in her. In an age where we are in constant search of authenticity, look no further than Deep Within the Hollow, and you can find it at etsy.com/shop/Deep Within the Hollow and discover what you have truly been looking for. Mat Auryn, it is an honor and a privilege to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be on.
I would first like to ask, about 6 days from now is Austin Witch Fest, in which you will be a keynote speaker there. Now, you have posted that there has been a lot of protests, a lot of backlash for being there. Could you update the listeners as to what's really going on right now?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure. I was contacted by a few people that there were flyers being passed around at a local restaurant in around Austin. I'm on the East Coast, so I'm far removed from that. So it was just, this huge mess of a prayer protest thing. So there was murmuring that there's going to be protesters and stuff of that nature. Um, but I don't think it's going to be that huge of a deal. We're going to have off-duty police officers. I've asked people to just sort of ignore it, not to feed into it, because that's essentially what these type of people thrive off of. When I was a child, I was raised in a similar Christianity. I was raised in Assembly of God, which is sort of like a hybrid of Pentecostal and Baptist. So everything was all about spiritual warfare and things of that nature. So I know that that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that kind of combativeness. So I'm not super concerned about it. I know that the organizers have things in place. I was recently at PantheaCon, and Selena Fox came up to me and she was giving me some advice and insight, because that's sort of been her life work, making paganism and witchcraft acceptable legally, and fighting for legal rights and things of that nature. So as far as I know, there's a strong likelihood there's going to be a protest, but I'll have to see when I get there.
Well, when I first read your article about it that you made public on your blog on Pathos, I took to the airwaves on my next episode, and it was a shock for my listeners hearing it come from me. But I did tell them whether they will be attending or they're online to keep your cool. Don't get baited into anything stupid, and don't get in trouble. Try to keep everyone safe and everything. And but at the same time, to be transparent, I also told them flat out, don't take their shit either and get run over, because that's just not how we do things. But I do hope that it is an immense success for you and the other people there that are speaking in the audience. And I hope everything goes great and it is very successful.
Thank you. Yeah. And my main point of that blog post is something that I fundamentally agree, which is that to be a witch is to be completely sovereign and completely in control of yourself and the things in your environment that you're responsible for. And when these sort of people, like angry protesters or people baiting, it's really easy for us to just sort of react, to have this kind of knee-jerk reaction. But the thing that we need to be conscious of is by having a knee jerk reaction, we're showing that they have power over us. They have power over our emotional state of being. They have power over how we react. So I'm much more about, keeping your power in check and coming from a place of response if you do need to respond instead of reaction.
You have just released a new book on February 8th called Psychic Witch: A Metaphysical Guide to Meditation, Magic, and Manifestation. So, my first question is, could you get us, the listeners, just a brief summary of what it's about and why did you actually write it?
Okay. So the heart of the book is the idea that psychic ability and magical ability are two sides of the same coin. So the book starts with diving into the fact that we're all naturally psychic, but that most of those abilities are dormant or we're unconscious of it. So it's all about building all of those psychic senses, all of those clairs, like clairvoyance, clairaudience, all of that stuff, to a degree of, I wouldn't say masterhood, but like adeptness. And then once you have that, sort of reverse engineering that process to do magic with only your mind, with only your inner faculties, which is something that early occult authors and writers had a strong focus on, but it's sort of lost that theme, that idea, as time has progressed in occultism. So, in a nutshell, that's my book.
How long did it actually take you to write it from start to finish, the researching and to the final release?
So there wasn't a whole lot of research involved in it because this is stuff that I've been teaching for many years. The things that I did have to research were things that Llewellyn actually pushed back and were like, you need to fact check this. So some of the medical stuff, some of the scientific stuff. The writing process is sort of hard to determine. I would say from signing the contract to it being printed was about 2 years. But there's stages. So there's like the rough draft, and you send that in, and then they have people look over it, and then they give you their ideas, and you tweak it a bit, and then you send it back, and so it's sort of like a back and forth process. It's not as linear as people may think, where you just sort of type up a manuscript, send it, they polish it a little bit, and print it. It's a continual, almost rewriting of the book. The hardest thing for me writing the book was just making these things linear in general, because the way that I teach psychic ability in workshops before writing this book, and the way that I teach magic isn't linear. So, like, I'll touch on a concept, but then later on, I have to go back to that concept. It's a lot of back and forth. So, I had to figure out a way to make it a step by step guide without trying to go back too much.
See, the reason why I did ask this is because there are so many aspiring authors, those who are in the middle of writing a book, and they really do not know what really goes on behind the scenes. They just hear, "Hey, I'm writing a book," and "Oh, I'm in the middle of it," and "Oh, now I'm published." So I'm really glad that you said that, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to really appreciate that little insight. So with this book, who do you have a specific target audience?
Yes and no. So I wanted to make it approachable and applicable to anyone, regardless of what path they're on or how far on their path they are. But one of the things that I kept in mind was I kept thinking about when I was a child, when I was like 8 years old, and I was first discovering. Books on magic and witchcraft and things of that nature, and what I could understand and what I couldn't understand. So a lot of it, I've tried to make very approachable for someone who's completely new. But there are lots of nuggets of depth there, that even elders have been praising and complimenting me on. One of the things that I had in mind too is there's a lot of people on like social media, like Instagram and Tumblr and stuff, that we call the aesthetic witches, which essentially, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's people who dress like witches and call themselves witches, but aren't necessarily deeply involved in witchcraft. They don't have um, the books or the connections or the research or the training that witchcraft and occultism has had, and they're sort of outside of our our witchcraft community. That So this community has been sort of sprouting up, and a lot of our community has been sort of dismissing them and looking down at them instead of stepping up to the plate and trying to reach them on their level and be like, hey, well, here's how you actually do it. Here's some good books, some good teachers and teachings, which is why I do a lot of referencing in my book in the hopes that the reader does seek out the people that I'm referencing.
Yeah, another term for those people that I'm used to calling them are plastic. That's pretty much what they are. They're showboats. Say, hey, I practice witchcraft, but when you ask them the basic essentials of witchcraft, they don't know up from down, and they're easily to spot.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily like have a problem with that because I keep thinking about when I was a child and when I was a seeker. So these people are obviously very, very interested in witchcraft, and it's not that they're not trying to dive deep. I think a lot of them just don't know where to. I think a lot of them are so disconnected from our community for various reasons. A lot of witches that are popping up in this community aren't pagan. And so for pagan witches, they have no way of of even knowing how to approach them. Which is why in my book, I don't focus on spirits that much. I don't focus on deity that much. I even present it in a way that if you're atheist or you're a Satanist or Luciferian or whatever you are, you can still apply this to yourself, because the most important spirit that you will ever interact with, the most powerful contact you can have, is the spirit that dwells within you.
One of the key terms that pop out within, I guess you would call a subtitle of your book, which is meditation and manifestation. Are you familiar with the term aphantasia?
I'm not.
Okay, aphantasia, for those listeners also who don't know, it was really started in 1880 and then really made some ground in 2005 and then 2015. And what this is for individuals, it's another term for blank imagination. Individuals who cannot physically visualize anything. You tell them to visualize an apple, they cannot. Can they describe an apple to you? Yes, they can. But in their mind, and I bring this up because I'm one of those people. Since birth, I cannot, you show me a dollar bill, tell me to close my eyes and visualize. I physically cannot do this. And in 2015, at the University of Exeter in England, a man went in who was a creative artist, could just imagine anything and make it real world. He was what they call hyper fantasia, meaning he can just picture into reality in his own mind. And he had heart surgery. And because of that heart surgery, he lost it all. And so now they're trying to find the connections of what that is. So when it comes to manifestation and trying to visualization, what do you say to somebody who has a fantasia, who cannot physically visualize?
Um, I'm not sure, because I haven't come across anyone like that in my teaching so far. I've come across a lot of people who think that they can't visualize, and have worked with them to developing that. The inner visualization, what I call inner clairvoyance, is something that I have struggled with a lot. It's something that does not come easy or naturally to me, and it's something that I've had to work on very, very hard, very intensely. Uh, One of the things that I discuss in my book is this idea of bridging the inner and the outer senses. So, one of the ways that I strengthened my own inner visualization skill, and something I discuss in this book, is I take a simple object, something that isn't super complex. Like usually it's a crystal, and I think that's the example I give in the book. So a crystal, it's a simple, basic thing, simple shape, simple color, and it's a process of looking at it, closing your eyes, looking at it, closing your eyes, to where you're sort of creating this inner and outer link. Um, but when it comes to someone who may absolutely positively cannot visualize anything, even after putting the work into it, including this technique I have of sort of linking the inner and the outer eye, um, I don't know. I would have to sit with them and try to figure out what works for them. Um, I do know that certain people may not have a frame of reference for that. So, for example, let's say blind people. I've heard that blind people who are blind from birth don't necessarily dream or think in images, but they think and dream in other senses. And that's, the beauty of being a multi sensual entity, is that it doesn't matter necessarily which of the skills you can visualize with. So visualization doesn't necessarily have to just be uh, visual. So I guess there needs to be a better word for it than visualization. So it can also be the conjuring of smells, the conjuring of sounds, the conjuring of feelings. It's all sort of the same thing, just different techniques in different areas. And I think that you can get by in magic and psychic ability without necessarily having the reference for each one. But I do, in my book, I do make it to where I'm trying to position someone to build all of those senses so that they can put as much of themselves as they can into their magic and into their psychic ability.
I absolutely agree. With the lack of my ability to visualize, I am a natural empath, and I really didn't know that until I've been practicing witchcraft for 31 years, since I was 11, and I really discovered I was really an empath like 10 years ago, right? So, everyone has some sort of ability, and from what it sounds like, someone who reads your book, regardless, that ability will be able to be enhanced. Is that like somebody like an empath like myself reading this book? I would be able to enhance my, what's the word, empath in this.
Yeah. So one of the things I do in the book to figure out what your natural psychic senses are is I ask people to just think of a memory that conjures up a lot of emotion for them, right? Without focusing on the emotion itself. But when you think of a memory, say, when you fell in love or something of that nature, what is the first thing you remember? Is it an image? Is it a sound? Is it a smell? Is it, a physical feeling? Everyone's wired a little bit different, but that will help you kind of figure out how you're wired and what your jumping point is. Um, but like I said, so my inner visualization is something that is not naturally strong, and that's something I had to work on. So the book is positioned to try to help you strengthen any and every psychic sense that there is.
All right. So when one reads your book, in your opinion, what would be the top 3 lessons any reader reading this new book of yours would come away with?
Um, I I'm not sure because there's like 69, or I'm sorry, there's like 93 exercises. Um, there's a lot in this book. The main thing that I do want people to take away from the book is this idea that yes, you are psychic. Yes, you can perform magic. It's just a matter of really putting the effort into it to be able to do so. I think that psychic ability and magical ability are our birthrights, and I think that there's something that really enhance and enrich people's lives in general. Psychic ability can give us a lot of guidance in our life. Magic can help us. Well, magic is like the most helpful thing in my life. Period. It literally changes your life. But both of those need the starting point of going inward and figuring out who you are and how you operate and how you think. One of the things that I mention in the book is one of the greatest psychics of all history in recorded history was the Pythia, the Oracle of Apollo, and like to worldwide like acclaim. And in the Oracle of Delphi, in the Temple of Apollo, inscribed on the walls were the words "Know thyself." So I think that that is a profound statement for this kind of oracular psychic power.
Now, this is your first and only book that you have written, is that correct?
To date, yes.
Yes. And I bring that up because you are very, very well known in the pagan and witch community. And for those who do not realize who is backing this book, who has given reviews, who's given their thumbs up, names like Silver Ravenwolf, names like Christopher Penzak, names like Gemma Gary and Jason Miller. So anyone who thinks that you don't know who Mat Auryn is, you might want to do some research because you're going to be absolutely shocked. Now, you also write for Pathos. You have your own blog called for Puck's Sake, and you write a
Yeah.
variety of articles on there. Could you just kind of share, what some of these articles are about? Are they just random, or do you actually have a purpose to write each an individual article for a specific time?
Really, it's random. It's whatever I feel like. So a lot of people think that Patheos Pagan is very sometimes they think it's journalism, and then sometimes they think that it should be something. What people don't realize is it's literally a personal blog. Like, we can write whatever we want on it. So a lot of that is, so I have a lot of articles that are just sort of musings, just thoughts, things that I want to express. I have a shit ton of book reviews, books that I enjoyed that I want to share with other people. And then interviews. I actually interview people within the witchcraft community or the magical community that I find interesting, and I want to know about their work and share that with other people as well. So the blog has been a little bit neglected since the creation of this book, but I'm planning to get back into the swing of it.
No, I mean, on your website. Now, I wanted to normally when people interview you in the show notes, they give this myriad of links. I'm putting one link in the show note, and that is to your website, mattauryn.com, in which they can literally find everything they need to find, and of course drives more traffic your way. But what I found very interesting is not only the periodicals you have written, the articles you have written, but also the forwards that you have written, in which on one of them, books that haven't even been released yet. Like as an example, in I think it's this month, March 20th, you wrote the forward for an upcoming book by Danielle Dusky called Seasons of Moon and Flame, The Wild Dreamer's Epic Journey of Becoming. And then another one in July of Blood and Bones, working with Shadow Magic and the Dark Moon by Kate Freuler. And you have also written other things as well. So, people see this and they are like, damn, when do you get personal time? So what a lot of my listeners like to know is, who is Mat Auryn? Outside of the magic, outside of the authorship, all the articles, all the forwards, all the teaching, who is Mat Auryn?
Well, no one, because Mat Auryn is those things. Mat Auryn is a sigil. It's a public magical name. It's my expression of all of my magical work. But me as a person, I'm not that much different. I because this is the shit that I nerd out on. I've always geeked out on metaphysics and occultism and stuff of that nature, and I'm very, very boring. Outside of that, I um, have the fortune of living in New England, so sometimes I forget how out there my life and my interests are. Like, you put me in a group of normal people, and I I'm almost an alien. I don't I don't know what to talk to them about, or how to relate, just because pretty much everyone in my life is involved in witchcraft or occultism in some form, whether that's friends, whether that's work. Because we're right by Salem, which has a huge witchcraft community. And then just a little bit further, there's Salem, New Hampshire, which is Christopher Penzak's Temple of Witchcraft. And that whole community. So I'm very immersed in it, which is fantastic because I mean that's essentially who I am.
I feel your brother. None of us are normal. None of us are normal. So hey, don't feel bad. But could you confirm or deny something for me? I have ears everywhere, and several
uh,
little birdies have been telling me that you are possibly writing a new book. That
I
you have
am.
been. You are. Everybody knows I'm known for exclusive information. Is there any way you could share maybe a title or a snippet of what it's somewhat about?
Mm.
A-
So, be,
anything at all?
well, it is contracted. I will say that. I don't tend to speak much about projects that I'm working on because it is an act of manifestation and it is an act of magic. So I apply the same rules of, keeping silent while it's, you know, being created. The things I will say is that this is sort of a companion to the first book. It's stuff that I wanted to be in the book, but it was just too much to fit the theme fully. The second thing I will say is that I am over the moon excited that Silver Ravenwolf will be doing the forward for it, and it's the first forward she's ever done for anyone. So super proud, super excited about that because I was a Silver Ravenwolf kid when I grew up. That's what I cut my teeth on. That's what I first explored. And in my book, Psychic Witch, in the dedication where I'm dedicating it to several people, she's the first one I dedicate it to because when I was a little kid, I used to read her books religiously, and I would write the information in my little spiral notebooks and pretend it was my book of shadows. And I would dream that someday I too would have, a book with that little Llewellyn logo on the spine. And here I am. I've done it, So it's kind of cool that it's kind of come full circle, and it's such a huge honor to have her do the forward for it.
You see what I did there, Matt, and for the listeners, I just unveiled the psychic witch. Very well done, Matt. uh, but like in closing, I did bring this up in the very beginning. What advice could you give those individuals who are trying to make their name for themselves in writing books and writing articles and really having that dream that you have accomplished thus far? What advice could you give them?
Um, so I think it's just a matter of, just following your passion. One of the biggest things that I have as a rule for myself, both in magic, but also my writing career, and like my blogging career, is I don't compare myself to other people. I'm not in a competition with anyone. I just focus on what I'm doing, and try to compete against myself. The other thing is I don't waste my energy, my sorceress will, on tearing other people down or talking down about other people or their work. I simply ignore it and I put the energy into lifting up the work of people and projects that I believe are doing well, because that's magic in itself.
Matt Auryn, thank you so much for coming on. It was an honor and a privilege.
Absolutely, thank you so much, this is fun.
On the next episode of Flatline to Beatline, my guest is S.L. Westerfield, author and filmmaker.